Yeah, hello. Welcome everybody who's showing up today.
If you show up, you're awesome. Yeah, so this is our first Thursday kind of live coding. Though today, I don't know if we're going to get into too much coding. But, anyways, I guess I should probably introduce uh, us first, right? um,
Right.
my name's Zach, and that's Miguel, of course. And we are from Northwest Arkansas Coders. It's a community of uh, tech related people um, just talking about life. And then the main goal is just to really step up and level up your coding skills, right? We want to help people get employed. We want to help people that uh, maybe already employed or even if not, get exposure to different tech stacks and kind of keep up to date with tech in general. Um, yeah, um, what's the plan for today, Miguel?
Yeah, and so we're gonna be talking about our current community website. So let me pull that up. And yeah, so this is gonna be our community website. We're gonna be open. It's open source, so we want people to be able to contribute from small to big parts of the website. And the approach we're taking is we're building it statically right now using Nux. So all the pages are pretty quickly. They're able to be hosted on the DigitalOcean app platform, which is a really cool service. Allows you to quickly deploy and takes away the hassle of hosting essentially. And we mainly went with Nux mainly because that's what I prefer. I enjoy Nux Vue, right? So we're using the Vue framework with the Nux framework on top of it to build out our website. And then we also went ahead and we're using Tailwind to do all the CSS. So if anybody's familiar with Tailwind, it's a utility framework. I like it because it kind of takes away from having to come up with class names instead of now I can just put in like properties and utility names in there, and it's pretty quickly for rapid prototyping. So yeah, we just been really just building it out and not having to think about CSS. Um, and the other thing we're also using is Notion. So Notion released their API, and we're taking advantage of it by using it basically as a headless CMS for all kinds of parts of the website. So if we look at the events page here or event block, all these events coming from Notion. So we have a table on Notion, and then we hook up to the API, and we're able to pull all this information. Um, so that's really cool. We're able to also pull. We have a bunch of speakers coming in and doing talks once a month. We have a speaker, and so we're able to pull in all that data from our Notion notes, and we're able to generate pages for each individual one of them. So we're still working on some of the notes for this event that happened last week. But we can check out James here and hopefully, yeah. So we're also recording it. So we're able to pull in the URL from the Notion, and we're able to render the iframe for the YouTube video. And we're pulling in all these notes coming in from Notion as well. So if I go into our Notion program here, and go into guest speakers. So all that data that's currently showing is coming from, so like for James here, we have this part here where we can open it, and we have all the information. So the date it was on, the guest speaker image. We did some relationship data here as well. So you can see that this speaker is related to this event. That it's on a different table, which is really cool. We can define the role slug for the paging, and based on the status, so we input a lot of the information beforehand, and then we just set it publish when it's complete. And again, we have topic, video ID for the YouTube video, and then here's all the notes that are being rendered on the page. um, and again, it's all on a table. Basically it's like a database, right? And then the API, we're able to pull it in. And so if I go back to our meetup schedule up here, we try to have a meetup once a week just to either talk about tech, talk about a topic. We have a guest speaker once a month. And so we have the time, the status. So like if it's like a completed event, we're able to just flag it as done. It's no longer going to be rendered on the page. Um, and then we're able to define what type of event it is, and we're going to be able to generate. If we go back into the homepage, let's see. So yeah, so we have a Hangouts meeting. It's purple, and that's kind of going to be on Discord. So I kind of went ahead and just chose purple to be Discord, and then obviously red is for YouTube. And the cool part about that is it's all coming from this single column where we have the type of event, and then we also get the property of the color through the API. And then yeah, so and then this is the part where I referenced that we created a relationship to our speaker column or table, and we're able to reference a speaker here, and that allows us to grab the speaker information and grab their name. And then once you click on the event, you're going to be able to have more information about the speaker. Like the website technically still a work in progress and is evolving. Like we just started it like a month and a half ago or something like that. So we're actually I actually commissioned somebody to kind of help us with the design. So that's going to be changing a lot down the line, but it's going to allow for faster development where we don't have to think about the design or any of the design rules, which is really cool. Um, and let's see what else. Yeah, I'm going pretty fast through it, but what I'm what the really cool part about this project is it's kind of leveraging Notion to be a really nice headless CMS. I'm actually starting a different project using Notion as well. It's a it's a it's a secret project, but it's gonna be fun once I get once I get it done. But being able to leverage the usability and the UI of Notion. So like we're hoping to get like more people in the community, hopefully contributing and maybe getting some content people. So allowing them to easily be invited to the Notion group and being able to update like a specific page, right? Notion kind of takes care of all the permissions because say we only want to share the guest speaker to like a particular account. That's all we can share, and then they're still going to be able to update the website, which is a very powerful tool. Let's see what else.
Yeah, I mean that'll be really helpful down the line. Say, if we get somebody to help with something, say like copywriting, right? And
Hmm.
we then they don't have to know necessarily anything about coding per se, right? We can just give them the credentials to log into the Notion and enter some stuff into the tables, or just send us over the stuff and we'll enter it into the tables.
Hmm.
And then, I mean, but literally, we can give somebody access that doesn't have any knowledge and they can contribute to the open source project. And you
Yeah.
can see why that's so powerful as a headless CMS.
Yeah, there's different approaches for not just for developers, right? In tech, there's a whole different levels of roles that you can get from like content manager to marketing, all that stuff, right? So we're hoping that this community project could help anyone kind of learn about how to manage, like a headless CMS content, everything. Even if you're not a developer, you can come in here, contribute. Also, kind of gets you that experience of working with developers, right? And so, like, say that you do something in Notion and it's not showing up properly on our website, then you would learn to communicate with the developer and be able to resolve that issue, right? So, yeah, there's definitely a lot of potential for people to come into this particular project and learn. And so, speaking of that, yeah, that's currently what we have. Another real cool thing that I implemented is so this form. Technically, we could have done it with Notion, but I ended up choosing. Let's see, this project or this service called Quest Forms. I kind of liked that it was simple to just plug and play into our project. And basically, it's just like a little JavaScript code that you plug in. It's able to convert all your forms into basically your actual forms without needing a backend. Essentially, so all your data gets sent here. You get an email notification, and it's a simple plug and play. And then I did some little modifications here, which is really cool. Let's see. Yeah. What else is there to do with Notion or any of that? Yeah. And do you have anything, Zach?
Yeah. So I think it's uh, definitely notable at this point. We don't really have a back end at this time, so we can literally use this as our database and the headless CMS, which is really cool. But we do have plans to build up a back end. So what were we going to be doing at that point with Notion? I'm not exactly sure because I know that Miguel was talking about it a little bit ago, but
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. So we want to build out basically these tools, right? We want to build a form for onboarding speakers a lot easier. But in order to do that, we need to basically create a link that's like not part of the community website. So, and then we want to do more like tools that do require a backend essentially. So we're gonna end up using this framework called Nest.js. It's basically a backend express framework. Essentially, it lets you build a lot of cool things. It has anyways, it just has a lot of very good tools to build out a backend essentially. It handles cron jobs, it handles your middleware. It's a good foundation to start off with. And we're probably what's going to happen is we're going to route a lot of the Notion stuff through this backend. Then it's going to touch the front end as well. So more of our functionality is going to be centered around Next.js because we want to build a bunch of stuff, a bunch of tools that are going to be a little bit more complex. So that's going to give the opportunity for not just for front end people to jump in, but also have a back end that allows people that are more interested in doing back end work also contribute. So like it's really cool that we can just have a pure front end without having a back end, right? But we want to be able to also provide something for people that are willing to learn back end and get into that. Um, and then there's just some stuff you just need a back end for essentially. We want to be able to auto post tweets, do all this community stuff, and then we can do all this scheduling ourselves with automation, right? It would do a lot of help. But basically, at the end of the day, the Notion um, API is going to just end up being the database essentially. Um, so, like this guest speaker page here, we're going to be able to create a custom form that we send a special link to the guest speaker that's going to join. They can fill it out, and it's automatically going to show up on our Notion table, right?
yeah, that's my next project for sure, and it's interesting too because you have to. Of course, if a guest speaker, if you send them this form, they don't have the authorization to post into our Notion. So I'm gonna have to set up some stuff where we basically give the guest speaker send them a link to this form, and they'll have a certain amount of time to fill it out, and then I'm not sure exactly, but essentially they need the authorization to post into our database, and so um, it's kind of our one of my next projects that I'm going to have going on, along with some other stuff for sure.
Yeah, and on top of that, we kind of also want them to be able to like pick when they want to actually speak, right? And also be able to auto generate like a calendar invite. Basically, really creating a automated flow, right? To the less we have to do for like administration stuff, the better. So not having to like create the calendar invite, don't have to go and create the YouTube scheduling, right? That's going to be part of that flow. And it's going to update the event schedule. It's going to show up on the website right here, right? Um, Being able to do that is going to be very powerful. It's going to lower the amount of administration required to manage the entire project. It becomes a better flow for our guest speakers, right? The less that they have to think about doing it, where they just fill up a small form and are able to get it done and over with within 5 minutes. It's a great thing as well. And yeah, it's just yeah, very powerful tool. Let's see.
And essentially, it'll post it right on to the Notion, and then from there we will uh, basically double check it, make sure it's good to go, and
Mhm.
then set a status within the table, and it will you know go live. So super simple.
Yeah, so if anybody has any questions about how we're doing something, you can go ahead and ask. Another thing too, if anybody watches after the recording, you can join the Discord as well. Uh, Ask any questions. We have a particular channel just for asking particular about this project. And we also have our GitHub group here. We have this other project, but we're probably gonna rename it. But yeah, so the current website is called NWA Coders. That's the repo for it. All of you are free to go and clone it. Um, you guys can go get your own Notion API and basically recreate the table that we have essentially, and you can build out your general community website as well. I think I do need to update some of the README. But yeah, you would create a NV file, drop the information in here, and you'll be up and running. I guess we can get to a little bit of the code, right?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. That's a good segue into getting into the code. Maybe we should just run through like a general structure, and then we can maybe move into what the API calls look like and all that kind of stuff.
Oh man, the API calls are gonna be fun.
Yeah,
um,
we'll segue into some future plans with that, right? But
yeah. So okay, we're using Nuxt to build out the project for the front end. Very basic. Most of the code is stuck in the pages and our components folder. So when it comes to pages, so obviously the home page is going to be our index. So we have an index.view. And right now we kind of just are loading up the components. And we're basically doing an we're we could have used the Notion SDK for it. I kind of didn't do that, but yeah. So we're grabbing the data here for our. Uh, Probably should have better naming conventions, but you know, feel free to submit a pull request that fixes that. Yeah, so we're pulling data here where we're grabbing the speakers, right? So we have an event block. Let's just start. Let's just start there. So we have an event block. That's for our event. So if we go into our event folder, And then the way the structure of the components are, they're automatically loaded by default, so I don't have to import any components in the main page files because they're automatically imported by Nux. So I'm importing the event block, and I created a folder, right, and components called event. And inside of that folder, I have the component called block, and that kind of ends up creating the name for the component. So it takes the folder name, event, and then it takes the actual file name and creates the component name. So event block, right? That kind of allows me to have like so say I have a event card, then I have a speaker card. So obviously you can't have two components with the same name. So that's why that structure kind of works. Is really great. And it also, I feel like it'll be redundant to have an event folder and then have a file inside of it called event block. So it's pretty cool. And so yeah, we go into our event block. We kind of have some HTML boilerplate. The really important part is right here where we have the event card, and I like to really break down everything into like single purpose components essentially. So again, we're passing down the data from the index page, and then now we're also passing it down into the event card component, right? And then we have a for loop here. So we're iterating through our array of data that we got back from Notion. Um, and then we don't get any speakers. We have a default empty array. But yeah, so we have this for loop here. Let me try to zoom in more. Um, we have this for loop here. We pass in our object, or sorry, our array of speakers essentially. We definitely have to work on our naming convention. I'll be honest with you. But yeah, so we're passing that in. If anybody does view, you know, this is a basic for loop inside of the templating. We pass in the key, we pass in the item, all that fun stuff. And now we go into our event card, and basically that's where we grab our speaker object. And then I have some little methods here that let me play around with the date and time. Um, and so up here, this is where I'm defining the speaker card. Um, and so, or speaker event card. Yeah. And yeah, so this part is interesting. So we have the type, right? What type of event this is. And by default, this is where we're grabbing the color, and then we're just applying a tailwind. So tailwind has a bunch of colors, and technically this is going to return like red, blue, and then we define the shade of blue or purple or whatever programmatically, right? So we're generating a class name here, and then these are default classes. And then again, so now we have our speaker, and then speakers have a bunch of properties. To be honest with you, the Notion API is like, the data it gives you back is very verbose. Like you get a lot of stuff back. So we're able to access the type, the link to like the speaker, the day that they're gonna start the event, the day, the time it starts. So this is grabbing the day, right? So this is grabbing the individual month. Because when we get back the date from Notion, it's like a full the full day, right? Month, day, time, hour, everything. And then I'm just extracting it with this method to just grab the day, just grab the month, the format that I want. And we go down here. We then are able to pull in the title of the event. And this is here's the relationship data here. So if we do have a relationship, then we're gonna go ahead and render this block of code. And so we're going to be able to grab the speaker for related to the event, grab their property, grab the name, and display it. Like, and this was very interesting. We'll get back to that in a minute. And then yeah, we grab the property of the location, the property of the time. So yeah, that's kind of the event card. Now let me go back here where we actually do the call. So obviously we want to only grab the events that are published. So with Notion, you're able to do pass an object, which is basically just a filter object. So we want to filter by the status, and we only want to select the values that are equal to publish. and then we want to also be able to sort it. So we want to sort it by the day property, and we want to do it ascending, right? So we're going to start from the newest event, the most upcoming event, to the latest, right? Um, and yeah, so then this is our actual API call. We're accessing a database. Here's the database ID for it, and we're doing a query, and then we're passing in our filter data. And so that's going to end up returning all the every single speaker, or sorry, event card data that we requested based on our filters, which is nice. And then this is the fun part that was not so much fun. So then we have to basically do another call to grab the speakers and that are related to the events, and then we have to map them back into our, or then we have to update our original we have to
Objective.
yeah, we have to update our original event object, and then we're able to iterate on it and then finally return that data, and then return it back into our actual index.
And I think this is a perfect point to bring up what I was talking about earlier. Is if you are looking at the um, the data as it's being called within the view, if you can you scroll up to that, Miguel?
To the view
Yeah, like what it looks like when we're actually using the data, not up in the this one, but uh,
here.
yeah. So uh, you can see like the item dot properties dot day dot date dot start, right? That's kind of a wordy thing, and basically what we're doing right now is we're taking the object in as it comes, and then we're also then now the most recent thing what Miguel was just talking about, we're mapping some other data in with that, but um, we've also spoken about maybe mapping some stuff into an easier object to move through. Um, it, Notion's API is really powerful for all the different stuff that it does, but nonetheless, it can still be hard to read what's exactly going on with those.
Yeah, like we just need the values, we don't need all the extra stuff, right? And Notion gives you a lot of extra information about the tables and stuff. It's not a bad thing. It's just for our purpose, we really don't need it, and we only really want to get like the meat of it. We just want the values of the properties. But to answer James's question, yeah. So this is an ID that you get from Notion because we already know this is the table ID essentially, right? We want to grab the event ID, and this is the event for that page. So you just grab it from the URL.
Yeah, so if like, well, you don't have it up right now, but that's okay.
Mhm.
Basically, we're whenever we log into the Notion, our Notion, right, we access that table. You can find that within
Yep.
the URL, and so you just grab it from there and
Yep.
put it right
Yeah.
right there.
Yep. So when you're accessing Notion, when you're in that particular page or table or whatever, you grab the URL, and then boom, you have the ID here. You can also grab it from like the Notion API. Like you can query pages and stuff, but like if you already know what you need, you can just grab the ID. So it's like doing a database query and you already know the table's name. So might as well just plug it in. Yep.
Yeah. Um, let's see. How about a brief overview of the which one was it? I think it's in the speakers. Is that the one that has the slug stuff?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, I thought that was pretty cool.
Um, okay. Do you want to drive it? Which part? are you like go over the whole entire thing or?
Well, just a kind of a brief overview. Really, the slug part was pretty cool to me.
Okay. Yeah. Let's see. Oh shoot. Oh yeah. Okay. This one's very interesting as well. Yeah. 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 For sure. Now I remember. Sorry. Yeah. So. Yeah. So this is the more concise data. We're not getting too much from the Notion API. We really just need a little bit of information. So if we go and open up the speaker card, here it is. Um, yeah, so we're just rendering out the URL, their name, their title, the topic that they want to do. And if we look at the link, yeah. So yeah, so we grab the slug here, from the data. And then we're able to then access each individual speaker. So based on the slug here, so we're able to grab the parameter. So that's like from the URL, right? We grab that in there. And then the way we go ahead and do that is we know the slug, right? So we know we grab the slug off of the Notion database on the indexing of the speakers. And then when we actually click on it, we're able to apply a filter based on that parameter. And then we just check that the slug property is equal to our slug parameter. And so basically, if it does find it's like looking for an ID, right? A parameter slug. And then we also want to double check that the status of that speaker is published, essentially. So for some magical reason, somebody's able to figure out the slug for a different speaker that we don't have anything for yet. This kind of protects it from that. Then we do our call to grab our individual speaker, and then this is the fun part, kind of. I mean, it's kind of another big mess about Notion. So let me switch back to Notion real quick. Let's see, go back to Notion. Yeah. So yeah, so let's look at James here. When we open up James, so accessing all the properties with the query is pretty simple. Now if we're talking about all this information here, right? Like the entire page, each one of these is a block. Like each one of these things, each title, each paragraph, each item of a bulleted list, every single little thing of this is a block. Okay. Everything is a block. It's insane. So when you have everything as a block, when you're calling that, let's go back to the code. So basically, when you have a bunch of blocks, or basically those are children blocks of the main page, right? And the funny thing is, pages are also considered blocks. Once you guys have a free time to go check out the Notion API, it's pretty fun. But yeah, so basically, you need to go grab the page. The page then has an ID, right? So funny enough, the page has an ID that then you can grab every block related to that ID of that page or the block and grab all the children. Because when you call the original page, there's like nothing. Like you just get the properties and it tells you, yeah, this thing has children, but it doesn't give you those children information within that same API call. So then you have to go ahead and iterate through every single block that says it has a child in it, right? So we're checking if it has children. If we're checking each individual block, if it has a children, and then we have to grab that children again. See how we're doing another block call. So the way Notion does all this relationship stuff, everything is a block if you think about it. And so again, we have to grab all that data, apply it to this children block object array, and then we have to map it all back into our original block. And then yeah, and then so now we have our updated page child block stuff. And I'm going through this pretty quickly. Yeah, it's And here's the other thing too. Each individual block, again, we have paragraphs, we have number lists, we have bulleted lists, we have images, we have to dos. Um, I have only coded up the stuff that I know we need. I haven't coded up images. We haven't done any images, but image blocks are different. So those are going to have to be rendered differently, right? And then what I'm doing here is I'm just kind of attaching everything into um, a new variable called render block. So everything is just rendering into this new block. And then I'm stitching it all kind of together. And then I'm just returning this thing called content, like this new thing that I built called content, based off all the block information, and then just rendering it as HTML right here. It's not the best approach, to be honest, but we just wanted to get something out there working.
Yeah, we're prototyping.
So we can say we're just kind of we're not taking the best approaches. Obviously, now that we kind of have something working out, we definitely will go for refactoring. And that's kind of part of development as well, right? Going back, refactoring, improving things. So if anybody has a better way, they can contribute, do a pull request. That'd be awesome. But yeah, this was a very fun thing to do. There's definitely better approaches to accomplishing this. Probably, I just didn't think about it too much. I just kind of threw stuff at the wall until it stuck, and it worked out. um, so yeah, that's kind of how the speaker slug kind of works. So for anybody that doesn't know slug, it's just like actually I don't even know the right definition for it, but basically it's like a filler for the URL. So if I go and go click on a speaker here, um, yeah. So see how this speaker URL here is referring to the folder. And then again, if you haven't used Nux, it kind of auto generates the URL based on the URL hierarchy based off of the folder structure. So like pages is like your URLs, right? So index is your home page, speaker is a page. Um, and so again, I have an index inside of speaker. So when you just go to speakers, it's gonna render index, right? And slug is basically like a placeholder. So anything that matches this here is gonna render off of the slug. So basically, this is the parameter that is being pulled by this value here. And I'm accessing it and comparing it to the database. So in our Notion, that particular speaker has this matching slug, and then that's why it's able to render and do all the calls and all that stuff. But yeah, what else?
Okay, go to where there's some Tailwind stuff, and we can kind of explain that. Um,
um,
so
yeah,
I
let me
mean,
go
this
to a
this
simple
I mean, this is fine too.
this one.
So if we sit there and look at the elements class names, that's our Tailwind, right? If we wanted custom CSS or just whatever plain CSS within uh, Vue, right? We just include a style element and wrap in our styles, right? But here we're just using the Tailwind um, library, right? So
Hmm.
if we look at line 2, we can see W dash full, right? That just means full width, right? And then H auto is just auto height. Let's see. So MY is our margin on the Y axis, right? And
Yep.
then we've got a value of 12, which I believe is 12 rem. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
if you
Yeah.
hover over it, it'll give
Um.
us, there we
Oh,
go,
3 RAM. Yep.
3 rem. Okay, so um, Yeah, and then we apply a class of text white. We're just saying our text is going to be white, and this is the other really cool thing is just you click or hover over the class name, right, and it will show you the CSS properties. Um,
Hmm.
so it's really cool because they got a lot of stuff baked in to where you can prototype stuff pretty quickly. And if you needed to, obviously you could make some custom CSS, but Tailwind also makes it really easy to configure your Tailwind stuff. So, like if we
Hmm.
go down into the Tailwind config, um, we you can see that this is our configuration, and Tailwind's really cool because their documentation is superb. You can literally just pretty much type in anything, and if it it'll bring you to a tutorial or documentation on it, and it's very very helpful.
Hmm.
If you Do you want to break down this a little bit, or do you want me to
Um,
continue?
yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so scroll down just a little ways. Okay, so essentially, you can see we have this key within this object called theme on line 8, and um we are going to extend it, right? We have a key of extend, and then we are setting our fonts right there. It's our main font, and then the backup, and then from there we define custom class names for some colors. So um, that can be named whatever you want. It's just a simple key value pair. If you want to set up custom colors, if if you say you don't like the way a certain thing looks within your project, for instance, like this box shadow, right? So I'll kind of break this down. Um, so essentially, it's going to start out with you see small and default, medium, large, extra large, so on and so forth, right? These are properties you can add on to your class, right? So default, right, is going to be you what small, right? Or well, it's its own thing, but essentially, if I understand correctly, Tailwind just kind of assumes everything is default. If you want to set up different views or whatever, how it'll look within a smaller view or extra large, right? You just literally put that in the class name with whatever property you're calling. Um, and essentially, what I did here was there was some box shadow stuff that I didn't particularly like, and so I added a, a new key value pair, essentially, right, into this to edit box shadow. Can we scroll down a little bit more? Okay, and so essentially, anything that you want to customize is pretty easy to customize. Course, you might not be able to do everything with Tailwind. It's really helpful for rapid prototyping and stuff like that. But um, if you're doing really heavy custom CSS stuff, it might not be your best option right off top. But uh, extremely helpful and really pretty easy to kind of get down the basics, and you could sit down for a couple of hours and get down the basics and start using it from there.
Yep.
I don't know if there's anything else you want to add on to Tailwind, but
I mean, the only thing would be this purge option, because we're programmatically adding um the event colors. So when you compile your Tailwind, it's basically analyzing your HTML, looking for which classes you're using, and then it's basically minifying like a smaller version of Tailwind that only includes what you're actually using. So that way you don't end up with a bunch of like code that's useless, right? You don't end up with a very large CSS file. But the issue is that when it's scanning your HTML, and if we go to our event block, sorry, event card, right here, we're basically programmatically creating a class, right? And so because we don't know the value here yet, so Tailwind, when it's purging the unused CSS, it does not know that we're actually are using this CSS class that we're generating on the fly essentially. So then we have to have a save list basically telling, hey, yeah, we do want to keep this class. We do want to keep these right here, right? And don't purge them out of the required class names that we need for the website. So and then a cool thing is dark mode. Implementing dark mode is really easy on with Tailwind. We might have a. I think by default we are using dark colors. Maybe we'll have a light mode. I don't know. But
We'll be progressive. Instead of a dark mode, we have a light mode.
yeah. Yeah, our default would be dark mode on and then light mode off probably, but again, we're actually having somebody help us with the design part of it. I'm not a great designer. Yeah. um, but yeah, we're hoping to continue the project, get more people contributing to it.
We
There's a
also have,
yeah.
sorry. We also have a bunch more projects lined up that are essentially in the queue, right?
Hmm.
Until we progress in this project quite a bit more. There's a couple that are getting thrown in as part of this, right? We were talking a little bit ago about the guest speaker form.
Hmm.
Um, that's going to get coupled in with this. And so, uh, yeah, uh, like, but we have plenty of projects essentially, and if you want to get involved, just message me or Miguel on our Discord, and um, yeah, I mean, we can figure something out very quickly. There's so much to do that the two of us, you know, both working full time and stuff like that. Just this is kind of what the Thursday meetups are about, or well, the live streams. So hold us publicly accountable, so that we keep working on this thing, and then also to get some more people involved, and to just show off like what we're working on every week.
Yeah, and we're gonna be like I'm sharing the GitHub right now. Probably next week we'll actually get to I mean, we'll actually get to building out the project here. So we'll be creating tasks here. We'll probably end up creating some issues. And that way people can just jump in, look at an issue, look at a project ticket essentially, and be able to just do it themselves. And submit a pull request and we, review it. And I mean, we're not going to be super strict. If you get it to work, it works. It's great. We'll provide maybe some minor feedback if required, but
I mean, that would be helpful just for the general flow of things, especially if you aren't used to pipelines. It's a good way to get the practice of, submitting pull requests and then having a code review done on it, and
mhm.
getting feedback, and then potentially kind of refactoring from there. And it just would be a really invaluable experience to go through.
Yeah, and I mean, once we start the back end stuff, there's so many like individual projects for the back end that technically they'll essentially be microservices if you think about it. Because we'll have them all kind of play with each other and work with each other. So if your JavaScript is not your thing, you can code it in another language, and if we can run it and hook it up to the core of it, that'd be awesome. And then we have a bunch of other ideas. Like one of the really cool ones is building out a Discord bot, essentially. So people can be like /events, and they can see which 4 events are coming up, right? Without having to go to the website or anything. It's all within Discord.
Yeah, so it'll just, essentially make a call to the API and then um, display that data. Essentially, the cards that you're looking at right now for
hmm
the upcoming events, all of that will be just text that gets printed out within Discord, right?
Yep. hmm
So
Yep. Yeah, I mean, what else is there to talk about? We got 10 minutes.
yeah, so we kind of briefly touched on this the other day, but as far as for the form, I wanted to kind of get your feedback. So, uh, for anybody watching, essentially, I've been kind of helping get all of the guest speakers in order, and I've noticed a pattern of having to get, their photos, the title of their talk, description, and a brief bio on them, and just stuff like that to be able to put into the Notion. I want to kind of automate this a little bit more. Just give them a form, they fill it out, it goes automatically into the Notion, we approve it, and then boom, it goes live. Uh, and so we talked about this a little bit, and we said we were going to discuss this live. So, uh, in your professional opinion, Miguel, what do you think would be the best route for making the front end of this form, right?
hmm
My initial idea is it's literally just a form, so why not just do it vanilla?
Yeah, so I want to start off with, and maybe we should have started this at the beginning and stated it. Um, yeah, there's like a lot of tools that helps us do a lot of all of what we want to do, right? But I think it's way more fun to build it ourselves and have it kind of all work with the way we want it to work. And we do want to build like an ecosystem for some reason within our code base, which is really cool. People contribute, etc. Um, and yeah, okay. With that being said, I guess we should have talked about that at the beginning, but um, there's definitely a lot of solutions out there that let us do a lot of what we want, but I mean, we're developers, we want to build it ourselves. um, yeah, so again, looking at Nest, and I think this is going to be the core of our backend essentially. Yeah, like literally just going pure HTML and a little bit of JavaScript. And essentially, what Nest is, so Nest allows us to build a backend API, but also be able to render basically um, using this templating engine called Handlebars. You know, it's just like a templating engine. It lets you do templates with code and stuff. So yeah, so I'm thinking we can use handlebars. So we have like a template rendering. And so you can see here, like you can render a message into like a HTML page, right? Um, and then we can have a controller that kind of handles the message. We can have another controller handling the request and then forwarding that request back to Notion, right? So basically you would build out a vanilla form with just HTML and CSS, and you just do your own custom CSS, right? um I don't think we really need to call in like Tailwind or anything. Like it's going to be a very simple design, right?
Yeah,
So yeah, very basic HTML CSS. Like we would include the CSS just in here, why not, right? It's not going to be a lot. And basically have like a guest speaker form controller, and then render out that page, and then have another method handling the submission, right? and that will allow you to build out the form, be able to submit it, and then within that submission function or method, you'll be able to call the Notion. And that's another cool thing. We're gonna build a Notion service essentially with the backend, so that's gonna handle all the Notion stuff. And that kind of is what we talked about earlier about like making Notion more of a concise thing and only really use it to map what we need. Um, so we're gonna work on that. But yeah, definitely just taking that approach, and then probably next week we can actually either work on this or have something up and ready to show you guys with this guest speaker by next week. If anything, just like a very basic HTML design, right?
which I've already been working
Yeah.
on actually. Pretty much done. I'm now just working on my CSS stuff, but so I'll have that kind of ready to go at least for the template.
Hmm.
But I think it might be a good time to maybe go ahead and start working on that next week live, so we can actually get to coding, so people can laugh at my failures and celebrate Miguel's triumphs.
I mean, that one night we were just stuck on just retrieving that single name for the guest speaker from Notion.
Oh
uh,
yeah, well, once we related it, it brought a whole, um,
yeah.
whole different piece to the puzzle. So yeah,
Yep. Cool.
it's
We got 6 minutes.
three
Yeah.
3 minutes, right?
Oh, yeah, 3 minutes. I can't count.
Let's.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess maybe now we can go into what's going on next week and start wrapping up.
Sure.
So next week we have the pleasure of having Lee Parham come and give a talk on RSpec and Ruby, essentially test-driven development in the Ruby ecosystem. See, Lee is from Little Rock, Arkansas, and he's currently a developer for IOU, a fintech company, but I believe he just announced this week that he's going to work for Shopify. So, yeah, really cool guy to have on. And I believe this will be our first talk really on test driven development. So, be
Hmm.
interesting for sure. And then, of course, the day after that, next Thursday, what we've been talking about, we're going to start doing some live coding. And then, also important to note, if you're watching this in time, that the week of Thanksgiving, we're not going to have a meetup at all. Wednesday, the day before Thanksgiving, and of course, not a live stream on Thursday because that's Thanksgiving.
Live stream
But
my
we'll be
turkey.
back the yeah, I'll be in a turkey coma.
Yeah.
Turkey and ham and all sorts of other things. But anyway, so we'll be back the week after Thanksgiving with more events and live coding. So
Yep.
yeah,
Yeah, that's pretty much everything, right? Go ahead and whoever watches it after the recording, you're welcome to just join the Discord community. Just go to nwacoders.com. We have the link there. We got a couple of cool people in there.
we got a lot of cool people in there. We got almost 70 people so far, so pretty good.
Right. And like we're open to everybody, not just in our general region. So
Oh, for sure, for sure.
yeah, the name is just a name, but yeah.
It's our birthing place.
And yeah, like generally we think a lot of people in that group, I mean, they work hard, but yeah, they've been getting jobs, right? So it's awesome.
That's great. All right,
Yeah.
Miguel. Well,
Yeah. Yeah, thanks everybody. We'll catch you hopefully next week if everything goes well. We'll be coding. We'll have fun. Thanks for watching. See ya.